engineering experience, and they also serve on the Economic Development Committee. Their personal and professional experiences, they have made multi-million-dollar proposals to business executives and evaluate the same sort of proposals, mostly information technology, and was a certified project manager. Favorite things are town beach, small friendly town cultural attractions, including theater and music. They do have the time, and they are available to serve on committees or in other roles besides this one as well. And I am happy to say that is the end of me reading aloud from a computer screen.
Nice job, Chris. Question, is there going to be another subcommittee once if it gets passed? And we move into construction, will be the other subcommittees focused on actually working with the contractor?
So there are multiple opportunities. In Rhode Island, every district has different committees that do different things. I've worked with specific committees that review change orders. I have worked with committees that review financials of projects, as in they review invoicing, things like that come before the project and approve those invoicing. There are multiple opportunities to involve people. You could also have a community that focuses on the construction impact, right? You have a group of homeowners that advise the construction committee on issues that could affect the neighborhood. There's a lot of different opportunities. It depends on how the school building committee or the town council want to set up those committees.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Does anybody have any questions on any of the applicants? As Chris was reading through them, you did a wonderful job enunciating everything properly. If anybody wants any clarifying, or if there's a name you missed, or you want to recall somebody's qualifications. No comments, no. All right, so the way we can do this is, I'm trying to remember how we did it the last time. I think
I remember.
Oh, then Chris, you can take it.
So what everybody, so it started out with people nominating people they liked and then discussion on that. And then there generally was a vote at the end on 4 people that everyone seemed to, or 2 people in that case that everyone seemed to agree on. So I think the best place would be for someone to nominate someone and for us to take it from there.
Right, I like it. So does anybody have anyone off the top of their head that they would like to start off with?
I'll take a stab. Nominate Sarah Brown to the CMAR selection team.
Refresh the committee's memory. Sarah Brown was the candidate who discussed being a young South Kingstown resident, a homeowner, and is excited, asked if they could serve in other ways as well besides this one.
I'll second that.
All right.
So I'm really focused on just building experience and general construction experience in general. This is a very technical proposal. This is the team that we're gonna have to work with to actually implement. So, you know, my take on it is anybody who has specific technical background, who's dealt with these categories for, understands the terminology, is really high on my list. So she not only fits that bill with the architectural experience, but also has a stake in the school system, having, you know, relatives in the system. So.
Chris, so how typically there are different schools of thought when it comes to voting for the members. Do we want to nominate, or do we want to go per person and vote?
I think if it's unanimous, then I would just go ahead and add them to the committee.
Okay, because I have her as one of my top folks as well. So if we wanted, so we have a nod, thumbs, nod. Okay.
So you want to call
have-
a formal vote, and we can just.
We'll do a formal vote on Sarah Brown. All in favor? Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Alrighty, Sarah Brown is our first member of the community. I have 3 solid folks on my list. I have a couple dots next to them, but I'd love to hear from the rest of the committee first. Chip, do you want to?
I'd like to nominate Andrew Miller.
The committee,
second that.
to refresh the committee's minds, Andrew Miller also applied to be on the designer selection team. So they have a commitment. They've really been trying to be part of this project, it looks like.
We have a first and we have a second on that. Does anybody have any questions, comments that they want to offer up on Andrew's behalf? him also, he was my number 3. So, if we want to do a vote on it, all in favor of adding Andrew Meller to the list? Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Hey, Andrew Meller, number 2. Anybody else want to offer up a name for our 3rd spot?
I'd like to nominate Renee Driscoll.
Do I have a second for Renee?
I'll second
Remember
that.
correctly, Renee Driscoll works at A to Z Corporation. They work in let me just see if I can find the application. Excuse me, there's a lot. Here we are. They are a resident. They have not served on a municipal body. They do have children in the schools, and they worked in engineering and construction management for over 25 years at AZ and Suffolk. They worked in the business development, but having said that, they prepared these proposals. They're intimately familiar with what they should be looking for when the proposals come in.
So we have a first and a second. Do you have any discussion or question, comment about Renee?
She was in my top 4.
All right. So let's take a vote on Renee Driscoll. All in,
No, I'm sorry, Dave. I didn't get that comment.
I was saying she was in my top 4.
Okay, thank you.
all right. So let's take a vote for Renee. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, so we have Renee Driscoll as our 3rd community member. All right, we have one more slot. We have quite a few highly qualified names. Would anybody else like to make a nomination for our 4th slot? It's a tough call because there's some really qualified folks who gave very thoughtful, experienced responses.
Had a nomination, but I was just going to throw some names out who are high on my list. Maybe we can just
Yep.
discuss. So I think the next one's Adam Conley, who has experience, Robert Cagnetta.
Yep.
And then Ken Burke also has experience. But Ken has, I think he is serving on other town boards and whatnot. So,
Yep.
Those are the 3 that I still have left on my list. Does anybody else have any?
So I have Robert, I had Kenny on my list, and I also have Russ Bertrand on mine.
I had Robert on mine also.
Does anybody have any other names they want to throw out there? Excuse me.
I had Mr. Bertrand on my list of top candidates.
Sounds like it's Mr. Cagnetta and Russell are the 2 that I've heard the names the most. Would you like me to go over their proposals again? Sure.
Yeah, if you
So
don't mind.
for Robert Cagnetta, they are a resident. They have served on a municipal body. They have children in the schools. Their experiences in construction management, construction and skilled trades. They've been in the building industry for over 30 years. They owned their own business, and they've served on the SK zoning board for 20 years, lived in South Kingstown for 30. And they are acutely aware of the construction manager sets the tone, expectations, and critical guidance. And Russell Bertrand is the next. They are a resident. They have not served on a body. Their children's relatives graduated of SK Public Schools, construction management and skilled trades. And Russell was the gentleman who discussed his many years of experience working in the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning industry, as well as being a lifetime member of the South Kingstown Elks, Rotary Club, Rotary International. They've been here for a long time.
So out of Robert and Russell, does anybody want to make a nomination?
I would nominate Robert.
Right, do we have a second?
Second that.
Do we have any more discussion on Robert Pagnetta? All right, let's take a vote. All in favor of adding Robert Pagnetta as our 4th community member?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Alrighty, then we have Robert. So we have our four: Sarah Brown, Andrew Meller, Renee Driscoll, and Robert Pagnetta.
Like that. I just want to say that
Dave.
there are very qualified people, and I appreciate everybody putting in here. That's why I asked the question of Chris. I think there's going to be opportunities for a lot of those folks, especially the ones that have more trade experience, to be involved in the actual construction project. Kind of going off what Luke said about, we're looking at folks that have more of the paperwork side of the house, and then we need to move to the people that have more of the trade skills. So I think this is great. I hope that these folks that we didn't pick tonight reapply, because there's some extremely good skill sets here.
I couldn't agree more, Dave. Does anybody have any further comment about our business item of appointing 4 members of the community to the CMAR selection team?
Just one quick comment. I just wanted to thank all the applicants again. It's really great with, the work that's gone into this from all the different levels, to see all these really great people that live in our town, apply to, spend their time, with us to pick our CM. Really appreciate everybody's applications.
Totally agree, Brian. And the wide variety of folks, ages, stages of life, the whole 9 yards is really cool to see. So I appreciate you, all of you who applied. All right, so we will move on to item number 6, which is to basically do the same thing, review, discuss, and then appoint 2 members of the school building committee to this selection team. Does anybody want to make a nomination from our body?
I'll nominate Dave.
Dave?
Yeah.
We have 1 nomination
I'll
for Dave
second that.
Palazetti, and we have a second for Dave Palazetti.
I know where you both live.
Are we allowed to decline the nomination? All right, well, we have a first and we have a second. Does anybody have any comments, discussion, questions for Dave? Do you have the time, Dave?
Would you like to ask my wife? No, I will accept the nomination.
All right, so let's take a vote. All in favor of Dave Palazetti?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Dave, welcome. All right, so we have 1 more from the school building committee.
I'd like to nominate Chip McGarr.
We have 1, we have a nomination. Do we have a second for Chip?
Oh, I'll second that.
We have a enthusiastic
That's
second.
very big of you.
All right. Any comments, questions, concerns, discussion about Chip McGarr? All righty, let's take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone
Aye.
opposed? All right, Chip, you're in. So we have our team. This includes also our 7th member, our town councilor, Greg Sweet, who was appointed on Monday night by the town council. So again, the names are Sarah Brown, Andrew Meller, Renee Driscoll, Robert Pagnetta, Dave Palazetti, Chip McGarr, and Greg Sweet. All right, so thank you very much for that. That brings us to item number 7. The amount of people we have in the room today, I'm sure, is due to the forum that's following at 6 o'clock. The next item is actually public correspondence. We haven't received any since our last meeting. So then we will move on to public comment. Anyone who is here for the forum, you're certainly welcome to come up and comment now if you so desire. The floor is open if anybody would like to come on up to the microphone for the business meeting. You are welcome. All right. Seeing as nobody is coming to our microphone. Discussion action, set next meeting and agenda items.
Hey, Kate,
Yes, sir.
before we get to that, I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda to add 1 item for the review of the flyers.
Oh, yes,
If
thank
that's
you.
appropriate.
Yep.
So I make a motion that we amend the agenda to add review of the bond information flyers and infographics.
Okay.
I'll second.
So we have a first, we have a second. I do want to point out that it is 5:57. So it'll be a nice quick review of the flyer. Okay, great. All right. I'm pretty sure Doug has it queued up to share for us to take a look at.
So while
Um,
he's queuing that up, if you want me to speak to it quick.
Please do.
And then Brian can also weigh in here. So I sent out today a couple flyers. I've been working with Brian all week on this and making sure that we continue to run it through multiple people to check and recheck numbers, make sure, as we've stated, to try to keep things as vanilla as possible, informational as possible. So there was two that went out. Thanks to Phil for moving these along and his graphic skills. We've added some financial data. So on these, we've clarified that the actual project bond amount shall not exceed $150 million. We did include on the flyer that the total project cost to include principal and interest would be $218 million, which includes, Brian, feel free to weigh in, but that's the 3 years of bond anticipation notes, right? And the anticipation that the principal and interest on the full amount of the bond once floated. Again, these are all based on certain assumption criteria, which we've tried to lay out. And then the total state reimbursement, which includes principal and interest of $81 million. So the reason that we did add the $218 million, again, it's really truth in numbers because that's the total all-in cost. Because if we're going to show 150 million and we're going to show the state reimbursements of 81 million, which includes principal and interest, we should also show principal and interest on the total project. So that was the decision-making process there. That number will also go on the voter information sheet, which goes out to the public, which will be in the paper. So I'm working on that as well. I've checked all the information on the right with regards to the vote and sign up times and when to vote with the clerk. So that's been cleared. But if anybody has any concerns on this, the intent is I'd like to get this out tomorrow and get it up on the website and out. So if anybody has any thoughts, comments, concerns, I'd like to hear them now.
Anybody have any concerns on these new flyers? And just to clarify, with the 218 million, as you stated, that's over the course of the lifetime of the bond, of the total cost. It would be over, this is 20 years?
That's correct.
Over the 20-year period, which is, as you pointed out, will be on the voter information sheet, just like any other bond. I spoke with you earlier today, Luke, when, you know, we voted, state of Rhode Island voted to fund the engineering building at the University of Rhode Island. It was the same, I don't remember the exact number, but it was, you know, a $150 million bond, but over the, and then in parentheses, right underneath it on the question, it explains how over the course of the 20 years, you truly pay back, you know, 256 million or, you know, whatever the numbers were at that moment. So I was initially kind of taken aback because we hadn't spoken to that number to date. And I think it's smart to make sure that we're putting it all out there, considering that's what we're going to be voting on. Does anybody else have any questions or comments?
All right. And then you'll notice on the initial, that first flyer, we took all other financial information off. And that's because we really wanted to, trying to jam everything on the one flyer really doesn't tell the full picture. So again, Brian and I sat down, we pencil sketched something out. Again, thanks to Phil and his team that they translated our chicken scratches into a real infographic. But the idea here is that we're trying to consolidate information in a way that's digestible by the general public. That's difficult to do because the numbers on a project of this size get complicated. But at the top right-hand corner, which you can't see, there's a streaming thing in the way, but same numbers that are on the first flyer. So $150 million not to exceed, 218 million total project cost. And then you have the 81 million in state reimbursement. It has our assumptions up there. And then what we try to explain is that over the course from 26 to 2030, we're going to ramp up in a methodology. And again, there's been some numbers floated out per year, $60. On average, you know, our previous numbers did bear that out, but the truth is that we're going to be ramping this up slowly over time. Some years will be more than less. That'll be based on the evaluation of town growth, how we're doing as in what our tax increases are for other services. So that'll be a decision with the town council and the finance director based on his guidance. And then we ramp up and you see that 318 number, that was what was discussed at Monday's town council meeting. So Brian did a look back on the previous revaluations, full and statistical. Based on that growth and projecting forward, the $318 would be the total amount after that 5 years that has to get built into the budget. So a person can expect to pay on an average assessed home value of $468,300, that $318, right? That has to be sustained for the next 20 years though. So it's not 318 and then you're done. It falls off. It's 318. And that's why in that white box, you say $318 per year based on average home assessment from 2030 to 2048 until paid in full. For the convenience of those who may not be at 460, what are you doing to me, Doug? To 468,300, the bottom table shows different valued assessments. So people can easily reference and you can interpolate in between these numbers. If your house is valued, let's say at 600,000, then you're going to be paying an estimated $408 per year. And then the last column is the total amount somebody would contribute in towards essentially paying for the high school. So, and we've done our best in the middle column there, you see the chart going up, average increase of 1.66%, but we did put the caveat on there. The amounts may vary year to year. Again, some may be more, some may be less. I think the goal would be for the town to keep it as painless as possible, meaning that, you know, on years where we may not have as much need on a municipal side, we may provide a little bit more into the bond. On times where schools in town need a little bit more, then that would be the year that we try to keep those a little bit less contribution to the bond. So with that, I sent it out to the committee to hopefully poke holes in it. I'm glad we're showing this to the community if they want to poke holes in it, but we have to get something out there. And we all know that. And the goal would be that by tomorrow, this would also go on the website and be pushed out so people can better understand the financials.
Does anybody have any opinion, any comment, any holes to poke in the flyers at this moment?
Just one suggestion on this slide, possibly putting the chart into the left. So if someone's looking at their home assessment, they can go right across rather than if they look at their house is worth 400,000 and then they slide up or down by accident.
Right.
So just so it goes numbers in a row.
What do you think, Phil? Doable? Okay. It's good feedback. Anybody else?
And if you continue to look at it over the next 12 hours or so, you can, is it Phil who's going to be updating it or connect?
Yeah,
with you?
well, I'll communicate with Phil. We'll, you know, I'll make sure that any updates get done. And then the voter information guide, the full packet. So just really quickly on that, will reflect probably these numbers in a little bit more depth. We'll have a description of the project. It has voting districts, very similar to the previous packet with some amendments. We've tried to provide a little bit more information on there, more than what was in the previous bond vote for the school bond. So that will also be going out in the newspaper. I believe it's next week.
All right. So that brings us to our last item of setting our next meeting and or suggestion of any agenda items. I believe we already have our next meeting set. I have April 25th at 5 o'clock in our regular town hall chambers. And then on the 27th is our next visioning session, town hall style forum, similar to what we are running into right now. So that will be on April 27th, 9.
Kate, that's the 20th.
I'm sorry, the 20th. I'm sorry. Our next, I didn't update my personal calendar. So that'll be the April 20th is our next visioning session. So on the 25th, our meeting, I have it as 5 o'clock. Okay, yes, 5 o'clock. And then the visioning session, my apologies, is April 20th. At 9, from 9 to 11, here at the high school. Thank you. All right. I will entertain a motion to adjourn so that we can move on to our forum that all of these lovely folks have come out to participate in.
Make that motion.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Thank you. You're up, Phil.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Let's go ahead and get started. I appreciate your attendance and recognize that many of us have probably already had a long day, so we want to try to make this as informative and interactive as possible. We're going to go through a lot of information tonight. This is our first of two community forums on the high school replacement project. My name is Philip Conte. I'm an architect with Studio Jade. I had the pleasure of working with you through stage 1 and stage 2. And with my partners, the SLAM Collaborative, we'll be moving into stage 3. We'll talk a little bit about that. But for those of you who have joined us previously, we try to make these sessions as interactive as possible. So there will be a number of questions that we will be presenting to you throughout this presentation, and we will have live polling data based on your response. So if you would like, go ahead and take your phones, turn your camera on, go ahead and scan that QR code. That will enable you to interact with the questions throughout the presentation. So we'll take a minute for you to do this.
And a lot of these questions are designed to help us for the next community forum, what additional information we should be providing to the community, what additional information that people want to see on the website. So that's like another purpose of these questions.
Are there any? Yes. Could not get that if you just scan this code. The best way to log on is to just scan the codes. Feel free to come up and get closer. This is not uncommon for people to do. Does everybody feel like they're ready? No, not yet. We can wait a minute. It's not a problem. All right. Are we good? Don't be embarrassed to ask for help. We've got IT here. Yes, someone needs help. All right. All right. Thank you, everyone, for being patient for that. Okay, this is our agenda for this evening. We want to have introductions and we want to set the goal of this meeting. We wanted to talk about the RIDE process and a brief history of the project for all of the newcomers, highlight the importance of the project and some of the aspects of it, talk about budget and costs, tax implications, the next steps for the project and overall schedule, and then leave plenty of time for open forum. So on your phones, you should be prompted by this question. How would you describe yourself? Short, tall, attractive, unattractive? No, just kidding. So this is important for us to know who is here. It's a little unfortunate that there are no students here because we are talking about a facility that will impact them and they are the daily users in addition to the educators. So perhaps for our April 20th forum, maybe the word could get out to the students because I do think they also have a voice in this. Next question. Is this your first time attending a public meeting regarding this project? Okay, so it's split 50-50. And that's good. Thank you for taking advantage of the opportunity for hearing a little bit more about this project. And for those that have been here before, thank you for coming again. So how would you describe your understanding of the project? All right, so for those that don't know anything, we hope you know more when we complete this evening. And we hope to address some of the questions that you may have this evening through the presentation and through the open forum. So this is an opinion question. Do you feel your voice has been heard yet?
At the end of tonight, we hope that this is 100% yes. So right now for this question, it's 29 no, 11 yes. So the last one was 50-50. And the one before that, most people were residents. There were a few educators, no students, a couple business partners. And parents, thank you. Parents, lots of parents too.
So this is a question where you can exercise your thumbs. All right. What do you want to learn more about today? You only have 200 characters. Feel free to type away. Obviously, let's keep it appropriate. So we will read these off.
We have tax implications, how money spent will be used, where is the preschool going, athletic facility, environmental impacts of the projects. If trees and green space are eliminated during construction, how will they be replaced? Honest tax implications, why new is better, understanding the benefits, what the goal is and how it will be funded, pros and cons of building new versus rehabbing the current new facility. Let's see here, project aspirations versus cost, how will we afford to stay in SK, and the exact plan and location of buildings as well as tax impact. So for the majority of these questions, excluding the sending the mailer, we have an answer for you today.
So I'd like to begin with some introductions. As I mentioned, my name is Philip Conte and I'm an architect, and I have been working with SK for 3 years and very happy to see this project through completion. With me is Gina Anderson and Kathy Ellithorpe. Kathy's a principal with the SLAM Collaborative on a project of this size. We wanted to bring them in as a design partner. And Chris, you want to introduce yourself?
So hi, everyone. My name is Chris Spiegel. I'm with Left Field Project Management. I'm our managing director of the Rhode Island office. Like many of you, I'm a parent. I have 2 young children in Rhode Island's public schools. Also, my community is going through this exact same process. A $250 million bond was approved in my community, and I actually happen to live on the street that one of the new schools is going to be constructed on. So I like to think I can hopefully empathize with some of you out here today. I also serve my community as a member of the Special Education Advisory Committee, and I serve on the board of directors of a national nonprofit that goes into high schools and tries to get kids involved in the architecture, engineering, and construction industry.
So I think it's important to also recognize the school building committee members. What's important here is to understand that they have specific roles that are dictated by RIDE or the town charter on why they're part of this group and what they're tasked with. Many of these people, they just had their school building committee meeting member, but they have done a lot of work over the last several years. And as a community, you should be very proud of where you have come over the last 3 years. And you're about to do something very impactful. And certainly there's been some leadership here as well as in the community and at the town level. So congratulations on that. As I mentioned, Studio Jade and SLAM have been working together since 2005. Together, we've worked on over $500 million worth of school construction in Rhode Island across more than 25 projects. And these are some of the projects that we have worked on and are currently working on. And a project of this scale, I'm absolutely confident that together we can deliver a project upon a successful bond vote.
So again, I said my name is Chris Spiegel, and I'm from Left Field Project Management. We are a small locally owned company with only 40 employees. We were established in 2007. We do consider ourselves high school specialists. We have built the largest and most complicated high schools in New England, including Durfee and Fall River. We're building an $800 million high school in West Roxbury, Massachusetts. This is our specialty as high schools, and as well as designing or building career and technical education schools as well. 75% of our business is from repeat clients. We have about 2.3 billion in active projects right now, 97% employee retention, and 35% of our MBE WB employees.
So I think it's important to state the goal of this session. We want you to know more than you know right now, right? So over the next hour, we want you to know more. And that information is going to come from either this presentation or answers to your questions or direction from us to go find the additional information that you may be looking for. I want to be very clear. We are here to talk about the project that has been approved by RIDE, the project that is on the bond question on May 7th, and that is for a new replacement high school. You can absolutely, during the open forum, share your thoughts, but really, we only have information on what the question is on May 7th. So Chris, do you want to talk through the RIDE process really quick?
Oh, sure. So in order to qualify for reimbursement from the state of Rhode Island and the Rhode Island School Building Authority, every single construction project or school project needs to follow the RIDE process. It is a regulated set of checkpoints that is defined per statute that each school district needs to embark on if they're going to receive reimbursement. Many of you know that this project will qualify for between 50 and 55% reimbursement from the state. That means 50 cents on every dollar that you guys spend up to a certain point that has been approved, you guys will be reimbursed. So stage one has been completed and approved, and I'll go into exactly what the deliverables are for that in a second. But in stage one, you identify your team, you put together a school building committee, you put together a letter of intent, and stage one is all about identifying needs. So it's taking a holistic look at your school program, your educational program, and your buildings across the entire district and identifying your needs, not solutions, just your needs. They want you focusing on driving the data and getting as much data as possible about what your school district's needs are. Developing solutions comes in stage two. And again, as I have mentioned, the Rhode Island Department of Education has approved a stage two submission for a new high school for South Kingstown if the voters approve it. Stage three. So at the end of stage two, once you receive approval, then you start to go into voter approval. So this is where we currently are right here. So enabling legislation has been passed by the House and the state. I believe it's already been signed by the governor. So if the voters approve this project on May 7th, we will then embark into stage three. Phil? So what is stage three? Stage three is design reviews. Remember, we are only at stage two right now. We have a schematic design for the high school. And the purpose of that schematic design is to make sure that we can build what the educational program demands, how those spaces will interact with each other. Are we considering site restrictions or land use restrictions of the site? And are we getting good preliminary cost data so that we can form our budgets accurately? In stage three, we take that schematic design and we move it forward. So between now and I believe probably until about June of 2024 or 2025, excuse me, we have a lot more to work on in terms of finalizing the design. So when you're going to see some images here of the school and some site plans, I don't want you to get caught up on the fact that I don't like that tree there, or I don't like that color of window, or this brick is ugly. All of that are fine details. We're looking at the overall schematic design in the educational program, because I know some people can get hung up on details. I know I can too. In stage three, there are 3 regulated checkpoints, and I'll go into them in a minute, but essentially RIDE reviews your design at 3 checkpoints to make sure that you are A, meeting the educational program, and B, designing a school that confirms to RIDE regulations for new school buildings or renovations for that matter. Stage 4 is construction. That's when we actually build the school, and we're targeting around June of 2025 to break ground on this project. And of course, at the end of the project, this is project completion. This is when you submit all your bills. This is when you get reimbursement. This is when the project gets audited. I get audited. I feel a little bit like Bob Barker on The Price is Right. There's not a showcase at the end. I apologize. Next slide, please, Phil. So again, what is in the stage 2? Again, we were approved by RIDE in 2023. So first, you identify the LEA's needs across a variety of metrics. An emphasis on collaboration between the town, a holistic and data-driven approach, and there is no assumptions of solutions. You need to do a true feasibility study. You can't go in there with the stage 1 and say, we're building a new high school. We didn't look at anything else. That's it. RIDE will reject it, and you have to start back over. You have to look at all solutions for all of the issues. It does not factor in cost. Remember, because they don't want you limiting yourself in the data that you're collecting. They want you to look at all of the data. And it sets the stage for public engagement and options discussion. Options are what those potential solutions might be. So these are typical deliverables of a stage 1. You look at the operating budget, a land use study, project schedule, procurement compliance, a utility incentive study, right? How many reimbursement programs, state, federal, can we maximize on this project? And educational programming, demographic reporting, that's a very important one. RIDE insists that you build to a demographic report. The only exception to deviate that is if you're doing universal pre-K. Next slide, please, Phil. And then the stage 2, again, our stage 2 was approved by RIDE already. You finalize your preferred design option. In this case, it was the replacement of the high school. You have community-wide visioning sessions and public engagement. Phil had those community sessions in this room. I believe there was a number of them. Alignment with educational objectives. So an educational objective was 21st century learning for South Kingstown students. And so the design has to align with that. We had approval by RIDE and the Council on Elementary and Secondary Education in 2023. Finalization of a project budget at 150 million. And the budget was designed to be as conservative as possible to eliminate scope reduction, right? Everyone knows what happened in Newport, right? Project went a little bit over budget. They had to draw back scope. You probably heard about it in a lot of projects. Our task as your OPM was to build you a budget that made sure that we would keep all of the scope in this project. You wanted a new school, you wanted fields on site, and you want an athletic complex. So we built you a budget at 150 million that can do that. And we'll go into that in more detail later. Typical, oh, sorry.
Oh, let me go back.
It's all right. So typical deliverables, schematic design documents, you have to do a traffic impact study, right? How is a new school going to affect traffic in the town? We want to know, we have performed that. Geotechnical survey, third-party cost estimates, a structural report, a site purchase plan. And then this is important here, a Northeast collaborative for high-performing schools. This is a sustainability requirement for your schools. Any new school building or renovation in Rhode Island must comply with the Northeast collaborative for high-performing schools. A lot of you are familiar with maybe LEED, LEED Gold, LEED Silver. This is a free version of LEED that the state uses. Northeast Collaborative for High-Performing Schools. So our schools have to be designed to the Northeast Collaborative for High-Performing Schools. We believe with your project budget, we might be able to hit some new sustainability targets above and beyond, but that's a discussion for later. Thanks, Phil. Next. So next steps, as I mentioned, the stage 3 and the stage 4. Contract negotiations for the construction manager and the architect and engineering team. Additional consultant procurements. We need to bring on an environmental engineer. The geotechnical engineer is under the architects for this post. We also need to bring in a move manager, as they're called, and also what's called a commissioning agent. A commissioning agent is someone who goes into your schools after you've built them and makes sure that your MEP, your mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems are functioning as needed, right? There's been a lot of talk in the news about these not working. Your commissioning agent assures that what you paid for is what you get. Program budget refinement. We're looking at construction logistics and operations. Many of you know that we're currently out right now to hire a construction manager for this project. Several of them are in this room right now. They are going to help us develop a construction logistics plans that will minimize the impact of our construction on neighbors, but more importantly, on the kids that are already in school, right? We don't want to negatively impact their education. In fact, what we want our project to do is offer opportunities for students to visit the site, maybe get interested. I'm a little bit biased in our career in architecture, engineering, or construction. I know Phil is hiring, so we're trying to make our project a learning experience as well. Again, another round of cost estimating, and this is where we set those sustainability goals. So are we looking at geothermal? Are we looking at solar? What are we looking at for the project? Stage 4, as I said, is construction, June 2025 to August of 2027. So we're ready for the 2027-2028 school year. Finalizing our construction logistics. The contractualization of a guaranteed maximum price. What is a guaranteed maximum price? So most of you probably have remodeled your home in some way, right? When you remodeled your home, you most likely got a general contractor to do that work. A general contractor is supervision of a project, and the way that they make their money is by marking up subcontractors. So they'll mark up the mason, they'll mark up the HVAC technician, and then they'll provide a cost for their services as well. A construction manager with a guaranteed maximum price is a different project delivery model. That means that the construction manager charges us a flat fee for their work. They do not mark up subcontractor costs. So we will see, as the owner, we will see the costs for masonry, steel, HVAC, we'll see all of those costs. They come to a committee and the committee reviews and approves them. With a general contractor, you do not see those costs for a large construction project like this. As a homeowner, you might, but for a large construction project, you might. But what is this guaranteed maximum price? That means that once we sign a guaranteed maximum price with the construction manager, the risk of the project going over budget is on them, not the town of South Kingstown. So usually at the end of DD or beginning of, end of DD, which is design development, I'm trying not to use acronyms. I apologize if I do. The end of design development, the beginning of early construction drawings, you sign a guaranteed maximum price with the construction manager. At that point, the risk, remember, it's construction manager at risk with a guaranteed maximum price. The risk is on the contractor to deliver the project on budget. That's an important difference between general contractor and what we're going to be doing here if the project is approved. So we're looking at early packages, development and release. How many of you have heard about the long lead times for all sorts of equipment right now? It takes a year to get a dishwasher, right? So what we do is we work with the construction manager to purchase items early so that they're waiting for us on site. We're not waiting for them. It keeps the project on schedule. Having more community informational sessions. This is where we go into your neighborhoods and we say that are going to be affected by the project. How can we help traffic? What can we do about dust? What can we do about noise? Obviously, construction, FF&E, furniture, fixture, and equipment procurement. These are televisions, chairs. Move management, that's moving all the old stuff out of the building that you want to keep into the new building. Closeout. This is where we close out the project, we finish paying it, and of course, reimbursements where you get that 55 or 50 to 55% on eligible costs, which is about 117 million. In 155% of 117 million. Next slide.
So I want to quickly go over some history. For those who were here during the stage 1 and stage 2, you saw the information we provided. It's all available for review. But one thing I do want to highlight was what I believe a high level of public engagement as we went through that process. We had many sessions where we talked about site concepts, where the school was even going to go. We had a number of meetings about it. We had sort of activities to come up with the look and feel of the building. For those that you participated, thank you. For those that are new, I can only ask you to talk to your friends about what that process was like. It was genuine, it was impactful, and I believe part of how you got to where you are today. What happened after that stage 2 is the owner project manager was brought on board, reviewed the project, validated the cost estimate. The town council authorized up to $150 million bond vote for a replacement high school at the Columbia Street site. You'll see the entrance facing School Street, and a new athletic track and field at Curtis Corner. And again, that is what we're here to talk about this evening. So for those who may not have seen some of the collaterals that have been, go ahead.
This is School Street. This is Columbia Street.
And Hazard Building is right there for your orientation. So this is a concept site plan that shows the orientation of the new school, the entrance being where you see that SK right there in the center. Now, again, this is conceptual. I'm anxiously looking forward to working with SLAM to further develop this. For the track and field at Curtis Corner, again, this is our concept. I want to be very clear about one thing. You'll see in the corner next to the C for concept, it says field house. That field house is not, and I repeat, not part of this project. It is not reimbursable. We are not building it, but we need to plan for the future so that SK can have the best athletic facility in the area. So we want to make sure we at least identified some future growth. And for those interested, there are additional pickleball courts identified in this plan. So there's another question. Grab your phones. It should still be on. You should not have to do anything, I hope. If you need to, you could go to menti.com and put that code in. So the question is, if the proposed high school and athletic complex is constructed, what do you expect to happen to enrollment?
So as of right now, 19 say increase, 8 say the same, and 4 say decrease for those friends in the back. 22 now for increase, 10 for stay the same, 4 for decrease.
So we can tell you, unfortunately, I don't know, Chris, if you can move that little thing there. Yes.
There we go.
So we'll use East Providence High School as an example, newly constructed. Their enrollment increased about 10%. Now you may say, what does that mean? So what we did in the stage 2 is we made an argument with RIDE that we think enrollment could increase. And we asked for additional capacity, which we were granted, which is rare. All right. So RIDE wanted you to be as successful as possible and position SK for future growth. So we had planned for growth, but that's not the goal. The goal is to retain the students and staff that you have. Keep that out of district tuition in South Kingstown. Keep the good educators in facilities that they want to work in. So I'm very proud that we were able to get that additional capacity. We'll be working with SLAM to make sure that in the future, if something needed to expand, we could do so. Next question. If the proposed high school and athletic complex is constructed, what do you expect to happen to per pupil spending? Will it increase? Will it stay the same, or will it decrease?
Reason we're using East Providence High School as an example, it's the most recently constructed new school, new high school in Rhode Island. It was built only 2 years earlier, 1954. It was built 1956. South Kingstown High School was built. It's a comprehensive new facility designed for 21st century education, which is the plan for this school as well. Friends in the back, 19% said increase, 4% said stay the same, 12 said decrease.
So in East Providence, the per pupil spending decreased
14%.
by 14%. From 16,000 to about 13,800.
So for 725 students, decrease just at the high school. You guys can do the math.
So what does that mean for SK? So to the left is the existing floor plan of this high school. And up in the right is the proposed plan for the new school. They are to scale, meaning a room on the left side of the drawing for a classroom is the same size as a room on the right side. You can see that the new proposed school would be compact, which is much different than what you have right now in this facility that has been added on to a number of times. So where could SK recognize savings? We could recognize savings in operational maintenance costs, the building systems, and just the overall components of the building. Then there's other factors, transportation, food service. All of those tend to decrease when you have a new facility because you can plan for that.
So the current building that you're in right now is 243,000 square feet. The new school would be 143,000 square feet thereabouts. That's a reduction of 100,000 square feet.
Which is about the size of Broad Rock. So if you wanted to make that comparison, you took this school and you took off enough square feet, the size of Broad Rock, that's what the new school will be built for.
So that is 100,000 square feet that you don't have to heat. You don't have to provide air conditioning. Custodians don't have to mop and wax the floors. You don't have to fix windows, leaks, all those sorts of things.
So assuming that they do, right, what percent do you think suspension rates decrease in new school facilities? Suspension rates,
So how often
disciplinary.
students get suspended from school, either for missing classes, not turning in work, behavioral issues?
So does a new school improve discipline within its walls?
Do new students behave better in new schools, I think is. So I think people are starting to get the hint. So we have 4 at 0%, 10 at 10%, or 11 at 10%, 10 at 20%, and 4 at 40%. Thereabouts, yeah.
So in East Providence, school suspension rate dropped by almost 40%. So school facilities impact student behavior.
And if you're interested in more about how that works, there was an article in the Independent today talking about 21st century school that had a lot of sources that you can do some information on your own, reading on your own.
So conversely, the new facilities increase graduation rates. You want to tally it?
Yeah, so 3 at 0, 1 at 3%, 5 at 5%, and 10 at 10%. 3, excuse me,
So in East Providence, it increased 4%.
from 86% to 90%.
But
So
this is not East Providence. This is South Kingstown. And I'm sure your graduation rates are already high. So we quickly want to talk about some of the project highlights. You have an understanding of what this school has. We want to talk a little bit about what you can have.
So a lot of this has to do with 21st century education. What makes a 21st century educational school different from the facilities that Phil went to and I went to? So there's a couple important things to note. That this school, along with many of the schools in Rhode Island, Barrington High School, two high schools in Pawtucket, South Kingstown High School, the original East Providence High School, I could go on, were built with a cells and bells model. They were built in the 1940s, the 1950s, the 1960s to adapt to the baby boom generation and to prepare students for the economy at that time, which was in manufacturing. That was the primary American industry at that time. They had a one-size-fits-all classroom model, which makes sense, right? If you think about manufacturing, it's very process-oriented, it's very regulated, it's very strict. You move from one to the other. Because they had to build them so quickly because of the baby boom, they were built of all masonry construction to support the rapid demographic shifts. That means that the interior walls are load-bearing. What does that mean in a practical sense? It means you can't move walls. You can't knock down walls. You can't create new spaces. They were built on the dispenser receiver model of education, right? That's how I was educated. Probably you too, Phil, where you sit down in a chair, you look straight forward, and a teacher is presenting at the front of the room. That's not how teachers teach today. They had poor access control. This is a fancy way of saying they had poor security. There are more doors that exit in these old schools. They don't need to be there. It's more ways for people to get into schools. They had inefficient building control systems. I have already heard from one person that they have hard time hearing me because of this HVAC system in this room. That's an inefficient building control system. They have no environmental connection. It is very hard in this room that we're in right now to see any of the nature, for any daylight to come into the room. They're built, unfortunately, with hazardous materials. It might surprise you, but believe it or not, asbestos was just finally completely made illegal last week. Last week. I know everyone thinks that it's just last week, right? Just last week. They had separation of career and technical education and in traditional educational programming. CTE stands for Career and Technical Education. That means that career and tech spaces and traditional programming were separated, right? They separated kids that might go into the trades from kids that might go to college. That is not what 21st century education does. In this building, even, I believe the construction program's in a whole different building, isn't it? In a detached building, right? They made do with CTE spaces. There was no integration of technology. Who could have predicted in 1950 what technology would be like today? And they're built to outdated building codes. What does a 21st century high school have in it? They're flexible, integrated to design to support modern educational pedagogies. They have varied learning environments, small group rooms, breakout spaces, large communal spaces, so that teachers can teach differently. They can collaborate with each other. They have flexible, lightweight, and often movable interior walls to adapt to changing conditions. The enrollment increases. You need more big communal spaces. It is cheap and efficient to change the spaces. It is not cheap to knock down a masonry wall. They have year-round utilization. Excuse me, I missed this one. So schools like this have a limited operational calendar because public spaces are often not designed for easy community access when the school is not in session. 21st century educational schools have year-round utilization. You specifically design the spaces. You can probably see that if we go back to the drawing, so that community spaces can be accessed year-round without going into the interior of the school. It also allows you to do things like have students having clubs inside the school while there's a basketball game going on that the public can enjoy. They have enhanced security and access control. That probably goes without saying. Efficient building control systems. Natural daylighting, outdoor classrooms, a connection to nature, no hazardous materials, and most important for someone like me who serves on the board of trying to get kids into architecture, engineering, and construction, it's the integration of CTE spaces with traditional educational programming. It allows for cross collaboration, engineering and art, right? Construction and math. You can have cross collaboration. Teachers can work with each other. Mission-specific CTE spaces. We talked about East Providence. East Providence has the back of an entire ambulance with inside their school so their EMS students can learn really how to do that job. We built a school in Fall River. It has an entire room that has a foundation of a house in it. And every single year they build up a house and they tear it down. My company also built a school in Bristol County up in Massachusetts that's focused on kids in the agricultural industry. We have trees in there so kids can learn how to do arbory, right? They can climb up these trees. It's different ways of imagining these spaces to provide real on-the-job training. We're trying to prepare students for future careers. In the 21st century educational model, it's all about creativity, collaboration, critical thinking, and communication. These are the skills that are in demand today, right? Integration of technology. We look to future-proof for technology because we don't know exactly where technology is going to take us, but we want to make sure that we have the infrastructure and the bandwidth to do so. You're looking at modern code compliance, ADA code compliance, fire safety, building codes. I've already heard from someone in this community right now about ADA compliance. A new school will be 100% ADA compliant. And this one is, but we're talking about making it even better. And designed to the Northeast Collaborative for high-performing schools at a minimum. That's a sustainability requirement. Bill?
So I'm just going to quickly go through some images of what you could expect a new school to look like. One that focuses on spaces for students to gather and to do work. These are just representational images across the United States. This is not Slam or Studio Jade's work, but these are the type of spaces that you could expect to see in a new school facility. These schools will look much different than the schools that you have attended. Recognizing not only a change in teaching and learning, but also making sure that we are being sustainable, safe, focusing on health and wellness, making sure that we have spaces for fitness, athletics. You're likely going to have a great view of the new Hazard Field, right? We hope that that is positioned from the building, from maybe a new media center. You're going to have a beautiful campus when this project is done. Visual and performing arts. We heard this a lot through the stage 1 and the stage 2. The arts is very important to South Kingstown. They should have a space that is worthy of what the students can produce and what they can deliver. And we will make sure that we have a large auditorium component to this project. You know, I think earlier this week that your band and orchestra received a superior award from the Rhode Island Music Education Association that was at the new East Providence Auditorium. Congratulations to them. We would much rather have them win that award in a new auditorium. This is what they currently have. Right, so that the caliber of your students is much higher than the caliber of your building. Same thing with your CTE spaces. They need to be safe. They need to be appropriate. They need to be designed to be what they are, not shoved in because this is where we can only fit them.
Stay on that one for a sec, Phil. I want to throw out a couple facts because I am kind of pitching the trades. It's what I do. But just so everyone knows, the average age of a carpenter in Rhode Island is 54 years old. By 2030, we are going to need 22,000 additional tradespeople in Rhode Island. These are good, solid, well-paying careers. We should have the spaces that encourage kids to get into these careers.
We know you have programs in the sciences and the nursing. We need to make sure we have those facilities for them. Regarding sustainability and energy efficiency, I'm very proud to say that if you move that, it says 2009. Studio Jade and Slam did the first Northeast Collaborative High Performance School in Rhode Island, which was the Providence Career and Technical Academy, where 15% of the energy came from PV and wind, 21 water consumption reduction, and 19 in greenhouse gas reduction, a green ribbon school. We absolutely know the importance of energy efficiency, energy conservation, environmental and sustainable importance in South Kingstown. We've worked with Left Field to make sure that we can at least start for planning for that in the budget. So we can not just meet Northeast CHIPS, but exceed that, which when you're done completing a life cycle cost analysis would save in energy costs. Want to just quickly touch on this?
Again, this is just to kind of to highlight. So first, let's compare East Providence High School, South Kingstown High School, built in 1952, built in 1954, heavy masonry, full replacement, sequence construction. This means that the students stay in the school while we build the other one. Then we shift them over and we build the on-campus fields and we build the parking, right? 21st century educational models, significant career and technical education spaces. They are compliant with the Northeast Collaborative for High Performing Schools. The main difference here, we have an athletic complex, they don't. And then again, just looking at the enrollment increase, 10% for pupil spending decreased, suspension rates decreased, total graduation, dropout rates decreased, and the highest level of scores exceeds expectations increased.
So for those who are not familiar with the project in its entirety, this is the conceptual site plan we shown earlier. I want you to pay attention to the outline in blue. That is the existing high school. We absolutely understand the importance of site context, the impact it will have on the neighbors, the impact it will have on the environment. This is not the final design. I am excited to work with Kathy and her group. But we have a pretty good idea that the building's going to be in this location because as you can see, there's really no other place for this building. However, it will be completely reoriented to School Street as Hazard was 100 some years ago. We understand the context, the materials. We're not going to design something that looks like it was dropped by a spaceship. This is the first floor plan, and as I said, I'm sure Kathy and her group are already thinking of how we can improve this. But what I just want you to see here is that there are major public spaces that are grouped together, and then the academic spaces, which are efficient and compact.
But you'll notice the different sizes of rooms, the large communal spaces that are spread throughout, all of the natural daylight, right? All of these classrooms, all of these CTE spaces have natural daylight. As Dr. De Silva at RIDE, and I encourage anyone to reach out to Dr. Silva if you're interested about 21st century programming, test scores are better when students learn in natural daylight.
The look and feel of the building. We had a great time conducting surveys and talking about how this building should represent South Kingstown. And we have started to understand the context and, as I said, look forward to working with SLAM on giving you a product that you will be very proud of that speaks of South Kingstown. Chris, let's talk about budget and
Sure.
costs.
So some of you may remember that the original budget for this work was $125 million. Well, Left Field came in. We did a line by line budget analysis. If anybody is interested, there are over 200 pages of cost estimates available on the website. Just go to the document library, click on design and cost projection. You can see every single aspect of this building, what it's estimated to cost. From how much each tree costs, to how much each window treatment costs, to how much the floors are going to cost. Everything is in there. We said that the project that South Kingstown wants is not 125 million. What the community has said in the visioning sessions is not 125 million. It is more. And we do not want to end up in a situation like some other communities in Rhode Island where they have to cut significant scope to be on budget. I'm going to give you guys an example. I'm the OPM for North Providence. We came in after their stage 2 was approved, after their bond was approved. When we took a look at their project and we started to get numbers, we had to cut an entire school out of their project. So they went from getting 3 new schools to 2 new schools. We did not want that to happen here. So we built you an incredibly conservative budget. And I'll go into it in a second, why it's so conservative, to make sure that we do not reduce scope to bring this project on budget. That is number one. The hard cost for this project, about $117 million. That's the construction cost. Soft costs, about 16. Soft costs are things like your consultants, your architects, your engineers, your project managers. That brings us up to $133 million. Then we said we need to build in an escalation contingency because the last 3 years have seen tremendous ups and downs, right? At one point, inflation at this time last year was 8%. This year, the numbers came out, I believe today, it's at 3%. But we still wanted to prepare for that. Then we also built in what's called an owner's contingency. These are for things that you guys might want to add in, or things that we run into on site. I'm not as concerned here because you guys don't have a lot of ledge, right? Rhode Island is hilly, things like that. But my point being is that at this hard cost number, your school can come in at $765 a square foot. All of this is taken from the website, by the way. $765 a square foot. Left Field, as I said, are high school specialists. 3 numbers for high schools that have come in the last 6 weeks, $715 a square foot, $723 a square foot, $726 a square foot. You're at $765. So we're in a good place right here. But with that said, You've got $16 million in contingencies to bring this project into 150 million. Just so you know, the hard cost for this project could come in at $929 a square foot and we'd still be under budget. So that is how conservative we have been with this budget. And again, the reason for that being is we did not want you guys to vote on a high school and an athletic complex. It gets approved and then I have to cut the entire athletic complex outside of the project because that has been done in Rhode Island recently. If you're more interested on the budget, you can see that we've also added in additional things, line items to protect scope. So as an example, you have $11 million set aside just for the athletic fields. We put in $5 million to cover you just for demolition. These numbers are outside of your 765 a square foot. It's important to note that these are separate line items to protect scope. That's what we've done with this budget. Bill?
So we do want to take a moment and ask Brian, Sylvia, to come up and review the tax implications. Some of it you may have already heard from the school building committee meeting. But I wanted to give him the time to go just view it, 3 slides.
Good evening. So the first slide here is going over some of the assumptions we used during the development phase of this. First being we have considered both 20-year and 30-year amortizations. The current numbers that are being discussed, we have been using an amortization schedule or a pay down strategy of 20 years. The interest rate on the bond, again, is currently assumed at 3.5%. I've been checking with our financial advisors on a weekly basis on that, and we are holding on that. That is still a good number at this time. The issuance costs, we are assuming right now the issuance of a max amount of the $150 million. That is the max this project could cost. And that we are assuming a bond issuance in May 2028 with principal and interest payments beginning in fiscal year 2029. Ride reimbursement is, we are assuming as part of this calculation, a ride reimbursement of 52.5%. It was mentioned earlier at this time, we are assuming a ride reimbursement anywhere from 50 to 55%. This calculation is splitting the difference at 52.5. And that is on the approved eligible project costs of $117,672,245. So of the project cost, that is what is eligible for ride reimbursement. For consideration purposes, we are using the current median assessed value, property value for the town, which is $468,300. We are assuming for statistical reval years, we did a look back for the last 4 statistical revals, which were conducted in 2006, 2009, 2015, and 2018. We're using an average of those revals to assume growth for the out years. And that came in at an average of 9.98%. For example, we have in 2026 will be the next statistical reval for the town. So we are assuming, for example, a growth in that year of 9.98%. We are using a growth assumption of 15.2% for full revaluation years. That is based on the last 2 full revaluations that were done by the town, which was in 2012 and 2021. And finally, for the non-reval years, which is the year we're in right now, or the next budget that the town council will be considering later this month, we are assuming growth of 35 million. As a point of reference, currently for fiscal year 2025, we are assuming growth of just over $39 million. So that's where the 35 came in. That's typically on a non-reval year, we come in at 35 to 40 million. That's where that number came from. Excuse me. So I'm going to start along the top right. The total bond project not to exceed 150 million. That is what was approved by the town council and what will be on the referendum on May 7th. The next number, the 218 million total project cost, principal and interest. That is principal and interest. So the principal obviously would be the 150 million if that is the issuance amount. Based on the term and the interest rate that's being assumed, The interest would be $61,084,100. And the balance to get to the 218 million would be the amounts that the town would have to contribute for bond anticipation notes or bands for fiscal years 26, 27, and 28. And that is how you would arrive at the total cost of 218 million. In terms of the state reimbursement, on an annual basis, the state would be reimbursing over the 20 years, $71,346,426. The balance to get to the 81 million is the pay-go amount that the town would be receiving from the state. And that equates to $9,748,398. I just wanted to put it into a little context. On an average annual basis over the 20 years, the principal payment would be on average $7.5 million. The town would have average annual interest of $3,054,205. That equates to a total principal and interest payments due of $10,554,205. When you factor in the average state aid that the town would be receiving, which is $3,567,321, that would result in the average amount the town would be on the hook for or responsible for of $6,986,844. Again, as noted, in some of the little bit of the fine print there, under the numbers, the state reimbursement, the town is projecting or estimating a 52.5% reimbursement on the eligible 117 million. And this is being calculated on a 20-year bond at 3.5% interest. The main box in the center, as you can see, the town is anticipating a 5-year ramp up. Put it into context, for fiscal year 25, it will be coming up on the town's debt obligations is approximately 1.2, 1.4 million. And obviously, as I just noted, this bond alone would be about $7 million. So the goal is to ramp this up over a 5-year period to ease the pain on the taxpayers, which is the point of that middle section on how we're ramping it up over the 5-year period. When the 5-year period is completed and within 2030, we estimate for the median assessed value home of the $468,300, that the tax impact or the net change from fiscal year 2030 to 2025, the growth would be a difference of $318, which that would then be sustainable through the bond's completion of 2048. And that's sure. So the ramp up over the 5-year period will get you to the 318. That's the increase in your, again, based on the median assess of 468,000. There will be a ramp up to that $318 in 2030. It will remain that for the balance of the term to 2048 when the bond would then be paid off.
Break it down because Brian's incredibly smart and he's a financial guy. I'm not. So for the average homeowner in South Kingstown from 2030 to 2048, $318 a year for the bond. $318 for the bond. Yep.
Yes, it does. Oh,
So the first question is, this is an additional tax? Yes, you will pay $318 per year in additional taxes upon the average home value. And what was your comment again? Yes, it does account for the reimbursement, correct. It accounts for it at 52%. We could get 55, but again, we're being conservative. We want to show you conservative numbers.
again, we touched on a lot that's in the bottom already, but one thing I would definitely want to touch on was again, that 5-year ramp up. This is again, an average. I wouldn't hold it to, there's going to be within that 5-year, there's going to be some years that are a little higher than the 1.66, other years that are lower, but on average over that 5-year ramp up, you're going to see an increase of 1.66% annually to get that to where the town will be when we stop paying the total annual payments beginning in fiscal year 2030. So I think that's a key point to address. There is a slow ramp up until we get to 2030, and then you'll be paying that amount until 2048. Again, as
Do you have more to say?
yes. It's actually 20 years, but also we have the 3 years of bond anticipation notes as well. So approximately 23 years. Sure. Oh,
They were asking for confirmation about how long they would be paying an additional $318 a year. Is that a correct way of phrasing the question? Yeah, exactly. So there, as Brian was saying, there's a ramp up period, but what we're saying is that it's 300 from 2030 to 2048. It's $318 a year extra on your taxes.
Oh, thanks. Brian, I can see a little bit under the line from 230 to 248. It says does not include additional funding for school and or town operations. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got to the 22.6% tax increase on Monday night?
yes. So that's correct. This slide does not account for any growth. This is just related to the bond. The 22% plus, I don't have it in front of me, so I know it was 22% plus. I don't recall the exact number, but that is factoring in the cost of the bond over the term. That is factoring in growth in town operating expenses on an annual basis of 1.7%. And then that was also factoring in that scenario also factored in $1 million increase for school operations over that time frame as well, over the rollout period. And that's how the 22% plus was arrived at. So that was factoring in growth for both school operations and town operations as well.
We're going to go ahead and wrap it up. And then if you have additional questions for the subject matter experts, we will bring them back. So the next steps and schedule of what to expect. So some of it is pretty simple. On April 20th, we will have another community forum based on feedback that we received tonight and the bond vote on May 7th. If that bond vote is successful, we will enter into stage 3, which is the design and documentation between the summer of 24 and the summer of 25. But I want to make this absolutely clear is that we will have a number of community engagement sessions early in the project in summer of 2024 so that we can have a dialogue about the spaces that Studio Jade and SLAM are going to be working on in the new school. We will have engaged our construction manager by then. And this is a very, very wise decision by the town and the school department, because having that construction manager on board at the very beginning, as Kathy and her group and my engineers are working together, we're going to have real-time data. It will be some very intense work sessions. Some of it you may actually see during those engagement sessions, but it's all necessary so that we can be what I call responsibly innovative, right? We want to be innovative. We want to give you these great spaces, but we also need to do it responsibly. That bond is up to 150 million. We need to be responsible and stewards of that, right? We don't want to design you an $800 a square foot building. We want to get you in the range that you can afford and you get what you want. And we're going to do that responsibly as a team. We think it might be a good idea in the fall of 2024 to come back to the communities at the back to school nights. Let the elementary schools and the middle school students see what they are going to be going into. Well, there should be a celebration in the fall of 2024 of where this project is headed. And one of the governors of this whole process is the RIDE School Building Authority, where we will be working with them over the next 10 to 12 months in a methodical process, making sure that we are being innovative, but we're also being responsible. So there's a lot of checks and balances. When a project is well-funded, as this one will be, it will be a pleasure and not a chore. And we understand the tax implications with that. But I can tell you the alternative pathway is difficult.
So
Okay.
just so you guys know, and Phil, but just so you guys know, by the time that we're done with this design development, we will know, and you will know, more importantly, where every single tree is going to be placed on the site. We'll even tell you what the first 2 feet of soil are going to be on the site. You will know where every window is. You will know what every color of wall is. You will know where every piece of furniture is going to go in the new building, because RIDE requires it. And it's the information that we feel obligated to give you. And then this is, again, we talked about overall concept schedule. We had approval for stage 2 here in November. We finished up designer selection in March. Construction manager procurement, as I mentioned, we're out there right now getting a CM. Schematic design takes us to the end of the year. Design development continues that. As I mentioned, we have early release packages that take us out to May. You'll notice that construction will also start right around that time with site work and some of the early release stuff. Long lead procurement, I've mentioned, move management back here at the end, and stage 4 occupancy and closeout. This is available on the website on the schedule tab.
Final question. So do you know where to find additional information about the project? Well, we will go through this tally. I'm glad to see most of you do. For those that do not, a simple Google search of SK School Project or skschoolproject.com or through the town website. Okay, so we've talked a lot, and it's important that you have that same opportunity. So we have a mic. If you raise your hand, we will come to you and we will answer your questions or direct you to where you could find more information. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Chris Little, and just briefly, I recently retired from 40 years working in the construction industry as a lawyer, and did a lot of work for major institutional owners, hospitals, universities, and some major public owners ranging from Mass Highway, Narragansett Bay Commission, largely on topics like project delivery and project development, which I hear tonight. And at the end of my career, I was asked by the governor, then governor, to be counsel to the School Building Authority. And so from that perspective, I want to thank you and the School Building Committee for the excellence of your presentation and the thoughtfulness and completeness. I just have an observation, probably more of an observation than a question, is that somehow or other, it seems that in this discussion, and I've gone on the website, the real impact and the significance of these extraordinary contribution from the state for a limited period of time may not be adequately displayed to our residents, because it's a really big deal, and it's something we're going to lose. And if we go back to what we would normally be entitled to if we were getting under the old formula, assuming it wasn't subject to a freeze, which it was for a number of years, we can see that on a dollars and cents basis, this is really a once in a lifetime opportunity to take advantage of a source of funding to replace a seriously dilapidated and inefficient school. So I just hope that maybe you'll consider a deeper presentation. I know Brian addressed that in a general sense, but I think the numbers can show a much more compelling story as to why this is the time that we need to move forward.
So
Thank you.
So thank you very much. I do want to address that. We did not have it in our presentation, but many of you are probably wondering why so many schools are being built right now across Rhode Island. That's because the Rhode Island Department of Education through the Skill Building Authority has authorized bonus points. And if you design your building in certain ways you can hit bonus points. South Kingstown's current reimbursement without bonus points is 35 cents on the dollar. That means for every dollar that you spend in school construction, you get 35 cents back, up to your eligible costs, as Brian discussed. Right now, because of these bonus points, we can get 55 cents, up to 55 cents, between 50 and 55 cents on the dollar. It is 20% more state reimbursement than you would have if you were to do this project and start it in a year from now. These bonuses are set to sunset June 30th. If you do not have your work under contract by June 30th, you will no longer qualify for these bonuses. So if you were to do a project next year, you're back to your 35% reimbursement rate. There are some exceptions for designing net zero schools. Net zero schools are incredibly expensive. They're very difficult. So that bonus point doesn't really apply to a lot of communities. But the bottom line is that these bonuses are going to sunset. And if you don't have your project under contract, you miss out on the bonus reimbursement. Mr. Little, did I address that question? Okay. Sure.
Just to follow up that point, if you put the implied tax increase, if we don't act now, what it would be to build this school in 2 years and 4 years, that might get home the message. Instead of 318, it'd be 450, 500. So
Thank you. I do want to be very clear about something. The project team does not put out any tax information. That all comes from the town of South Kingstown. We would not ever endeavor to comment on the tax situation. That is the responsibility of the town and their financial advisors. So it's a request for the town.
I want to add one comment at a macro level for those that are not in the industry and may not know what's going on in Rhode Island in school construction. The School Building Authority has approved over $800 million worth of school construction in the next 5 years to achieve those bonuses. That's almost $1 billion of school construction that's going to happen within the state because they want to maximize those incentive points.
Yep. And what Mr. Little was referring to as well as prior to this building boom, there was a 10-year moratorium on construction. So on school construction, meaning that the only projects that you could do was if your roof collapsed, health and safety emergency projects.
Hi, my name's Steve White. I'm a resident of the town. A very compelling presentation. There was a year or so ago, a vote to vote down a new school. And I'm not sure what the inherent difference is between this project and that project. This one seems excellent. The other one, I don't know what quality it really had. There was a lot of doubt. And I think there may be lingering concern in the scuttlebutt that you speak to your neighbors. Say, well, why are we doing this again? And I think you need to consider that lingering doubt as to why this makes sense now. We just heard compelling reasons why it does. That's brand new information to me tonight and probably to many. Sure. So I think there's a messaging issue that you guys need to consider.
That's a very good point. I don't know if Kate, are you in a position to comment
Nate
at all?
or Luke, maybe?
No? Or yes?
So this is, I will just start this while Kate's walking up to the mic. This is a very, very different project than that project.
I appreciate the comment and the point, and I agree with you. It is a very different project, and it is hard to differentiate for the community because there is such a poor taste from the previous project. There's a completely different team of people. We had a different superintendent. We had a different chief financial officer. We had a different town manager. We had a different town council. We had a different school committee. We have a different architect and engineer. And we have a different OPM involved. So, and we have a different facilities director / transportation director / general every hand director. Brian Mahoney, he's the duo. So I agree with the statement as far as getting the messaging and the word out. I will say it is very difficult. It's odd in a time at your fingertips 24/7. We're inundated with information all the time. It's very difficult to determine what to listen to, what not to listen to. And everybody's an expert. Everybody's an expert. Everybody's got an opinion. Everybody's an expert. And so it's how do you sort through it? How do you get the right information? And all we can keep saying is we're trying to share facts and information on a regular basis. And we honestly, we need help. We need help from the community to help us spread the word. We need you all. I do know that if I walk out into the community, I can't get, I actually sadly don't shop in town much anymore because I can't get through the grocery store without someone coming up to me to talk to me about the project. So it is, I mean, the information is out there and it is, how do you get the right information? How do we change the tone from the previous project to this project? We come to the forums and we listen and we try to talk at as many town council meetings, school committee meetings as possible to get the information out. But we rely on you all to help us as a community.
So I wasn't part of the first project, but I can tell you some substantial differences. But one of the main things is that we took the lessons that we learned from that previous project, what didn't work, why it was defeated so substantially. And we said, those aren't what we're going to do this time with our school. One of the biggest changes is the site. The old building was, the previous high school was going to be at what site, Kate?
So the idea was to do a campus feel on Curtis Corner, on that building, excuse me, on that site. There was a lot of differences in how we got to the final project too. We backed into numbers. Decisions were made ahead of time and said, okay, this is what we want. Now we smush it and make it work. Where with Phil's help, and then of course, once Chris joined, it was what makes the most logical sense and then move towards it instead of picking something and then forcing it to fit, if that makes sense.
So that's an important part because in Massachusetts, as an example, you cannot go out for bond until you have a construction manager on board and they tell you what the project is going to cost. Down here in Rhode Island, there are no hard and set rules. It's a little bit like the Wild West. So what a lot of communities do, is they have a project in mind and they have a budget number in mind. They go out and they get the vote and they try to squish it together. That's not what you're doing here. You guys spent a lot of time figuring out a project and then Left Fields came in, looked at all the numbers and said, this is what we believe you need to borrow to keep all of your scope and bring the project in on budget. That is a substantial difference because we don't want to end up in a situation, like I said, again, where we're drawing all over these drawings with a red pen and just saying, cut that out, cut that out, cut that out. So that's a big difference between that project and this project. We also heard the old location wasn't that popular to put a new high school. And just, there's general differences about this building than the previous one.
Facilities are all looking lovely, but I'm much more concerned with what takes place in the building with the students and the curriculum. So with the 21st century education, is there a change to the curriculum? Is there a cost to what happens inside with the curriculum that these children are going to be getting?
So it's a better question for the school department, but I'll tell you what we looked at when we were designing this school that aligns with your question. So RIDE isn't going to just let us build a school to any curriculum. The part of the stage one process, in fact, the most important part of the stage one process is what's called the educational program specifications. And that is a series of a lot of meetings over many months with the educators, the administrators, students of South Kingstown. And they say, how do you want to teach? How does your current facility limit the ways that you teach? And what can we build you to teach the pedagogies that you want to teach? That is a huge part of this program. And that really sets the stage for every other element of this project. So we had certified educational planners that came in here. They have their own certification, like an architect or an engineer, that sit down and have a series of meetings. They call them visioning sessions, where they learn how you currently teach, again, how you want to teach in the future, how your current building limits your ability to do that, and what can we build you for future teaching. That is where the educational program comes from. Specific questions about curriculum, I'm just a project manager, but in terms of what RIDE necessitates as part of this process to make sure that educational program is first and foremost is paramount throughout the whole process. The cost of the educational programming. I'm not an educator, but it's built into the school department's budget. Yeah.
Sure. As part of the stage 2 process, we brought our educational planners on board. We met with Chip and all of the department heads and the teachers, and that was just the tip of the iceberg. All right. We have a very good understanding of the curriculum, of what facilities they need to support that curriculum. When we go into schematic design, we'll be doing that at an even deeper level so that we can get the details right. What do the educators need to deliver their curriculum? You know, our goal is to do no harm. We want to give you a facility that they can educate in. And in terms of cost differentials related to facilities, it's really insignificant in terms of what we're trying to do with New Century Teaching and Learning. Whether the walls are here or there, or whether there's some openings and things like that, is really insignificant in terms of the costs. What we want to do is make sure we're creating facilities as flexible as possible. That's all.
To the public in the short time before the 7th. But I know that where there's a will, there's a way. It seems to me that one possibility would be to create models of the present high school and of the future high school. Protect yourself, of course, the way you did with us verbally. You protected yourself in the sense of don't get tied up that this tree is here or that. But a big selling point for me is when I looked at it and I saw the one school overlaid with the other school, and I saw it was easy for me to see the orientation. It was easy for me to see that we were building a smaller school. So if someone says, oh my God, we're building a smaller school. But one of the things that I keep hearing from people is the population is being reduced, you know, the school population. We need to say that. We need to say we are accommodating the reduction in schools. And then if they talk about the price, I'm sitting in a house that I paid $25,000 for in 1973. I got to tell you, that house is worth a hell of a lot more than 25,000 right now. So anyone who expects to build South Kingstown High School for anything other than the kind of price that you're talking just doesn't know what they're talking about. And then with regard to the curriculum, I don't know how many of you have gone out. First of all, I'm 84 years old. I'm not job hunting, but I have a son and lots of friends who are job hunting. You cannot go out and get a job these days on the kind of education that most of us had. We have to have other skills. We keep talking about other skills. That takes a different kind of curriculum. It takes a different space. And it's going to cost us money. I, as they say, don't have a pot to in, but when I look at the $318, hey, you know, I can get it. It's not going to break me. So I think you need to in education, we talk about teach from the concrete. That's something you could see and feel. So I would urge you, you could get a bunch of little models and place them, place one at Belmont's, one at Shaw's, with some other visuals. Get yourselves together, making those little kind of presentation things, I forgot what that's called, but, and get some out there before the 7th. Get them out there before Monday so that people can see what it is.
Thank you. Chris, the woman in the second row had a question, and then Brian, I think, gave the mic to someone in the back.
Screen. I'm Ann Sullivan. I'm a resident here. My kids don't go to the school system, but I'm wondering, I'm looking at this, what, the new facility you're gonna build right on this property. And my first thought is, what's gonna happen to the kids who are going to this school? Are they going, what's going to happen to them? And then the second question is about those athletic fields. I don't see a building there. So what's going to happen to that school? And how is that whole athletic facility going to be designed?
So, a couple things. So, left field and the construction manager that we're going to be going on board have a lot of experience in building on what we call occupied sites. I'm currently building a school in North Providence that is 20 feet away from the existing school, 20 feet. And those students are in that building and they're going about their day-to-day. The most important thing is safety. So when we put out this RFQ or request for qualifications proposals, each construction manager provides their safety record. They provide what their plans are for logistics on their site. The students are going to remain in this building and we're going to use it as a learning opportunity as well. We'll have all of the dusty, really noisy work that'll take place over the summer, right? So site work, demolition, when the students are not in session. But all of the real work for the job, that's going to take place where the students are in session. And I guarantee you, I would love to have South Kingstown High School students join me on site so I can introduce them to that. As far as the athletic complex, that's the most fluid of all of the designs so far. And that's really what we want to have more community meetings about, to hear from the community. How can this part of the project benefit the entire community, not just people that have children in the schools? So that's another big part of this, but that building is currently not occupied. It's going to be demolished so that we're not heating it. We're not paying for any repairs on it. Just it's going to go. And that's part of that. One of the reasons why we increased the project budget for demolition all the way up to $5 million was to make sure we could get rid of this building and the other building. Does that answer your question? I'm sorry. Okay.
Someone in the back with the mic? Oh,
So
may I?
basically, just as a recap, you don't know what you're going to do with those athletic fields.
So we know a basic program is submitted to RIDE. You're going to get a stadium, you're going to get a nice track, a stadium as in bleachers and a nice sort of place where you can play football or field hockey or things like that. You're going to have a turf field. It could be AstroTurf or a turf product. It could be real turf. These are all the community questions. We're going to have community spaces. Phil had some pickleball courts on that one right now. Is that what the community wants? It's the part of the project, like I said, that's the most fluid and has the most options for us to, because RIDE doesn't have as much say in that, right? RIDE doesn't have as much say in athletics as they do in the actual high school and the building program. That's got to meet the educational models. The athletic complex is really what supports the community and what keeps South Kingstown students in South Kingstown and not going to other places to play sports.
I do want to make one comment about the athletic fields in case you're interested in that or those that are. That existing football field that you have behind Curtis Corner is in a terrible location. It is wet, it is swampy, and it doesn't even have the correct orientation of a field. When we take down Curtis Corner and we free up that property, we're able to give you the stadium that is deserving of the students here at South Kingstown in the proper orientation, not in wetland areas, so that you can maximize that area and those fields for all types of sports activities. Regarding this site, the practice fields that are currently on Hazard Field will move to where the existing school is. So we're basically swapping. At a high level, you have a box. On this side of the box is your existing school, and you have some practice fields. We're going to put the new building on the practice fields. So there will be a period of time where you don't have those practice fields. When school is done, we will knock down the existing building, and that's where the practice fields will go. And as Chris mentioned, many of us, pardon me?
Over at Curtis
Yep.
Corner?
Oh, no, here at this site, at Curtis Corner will be your main stadium.
So there's already a football field, soccer field, track field over at Curtis Corner.
Yes, and as I just said,
Baseball field.
yes, and as I just said, it is oriented incorrectly. It is in a wet, swampy area, and the amount of activity that can happen at that site is limited.
Right now, student athletes are competing for resources. We don't want them to compete for resources in field time. That's something that came out of the programming with the athletic director, who was, I think, Rhode Island Athletic of the Director of the Year. Where is he? Just last year? Oh, he already left, but he's at an award banquet for being Rhode Island Athletic Director of the Year, I guess.
Bob?
Thanks, Bill. I'm Bob Littlefield. I'm currently serving as the interim superintendent of schools. Oh, yeah, thank you. I wasn't expecting that. And I'm a 37-year resident of South Kingstown. Both of my sons went all the way through South Kingstown schools. There was a lot of talk about curriculum and learning space and programs. I would just say there's been a real sea change in Rhode Island high school education over about the past 10 years. And that is the impetus has been toward creating programs that are going to prepare our students for careers, and and it's become a very competitive environment as high schools have been challenged to develop programs that have high value and high demand in the economy. South Kingstown High School has responded as best it could with a construction technology and a biomedical program and a certified nurse assistant program, an EMT program, and computer science and fine arts programs. And that allows us to attract students from other communities to perhaps counteract the fact that we now have 100 or 101 South Kingstown resident students attending programs outside of South Kingstown that we pay tuition for. And just a very small number of students who are coming from communities outside of SK to come to school here. What this project is going to allow us to do is it's going to give us the flexibility to not only grow the programs that we have, but also to be forward thinking and creating programs for the future that are high value, high demand, high value and high demand vocations or careers that are really truly going to prepare our students for the future to be able to compete. It's this facility that is going to be able to do that for our kids. And sad to say, it's not this facility that we're in right now that's going to allow us to do that. And that's the future of Rhode Island high school programming. And that's going to be the true value of this project. So thanks.
Thank you. Hand raised over here.
Is this on? Oh, yeah, there we go. I think there's a piece of this puzzle that's been missing, and it occurred to me, I was watching the town council meeting from the 8th, which you guys did a great job going over the finances for that. And it was mentioned by one of the town council members that the community isn't using the high school. That was mentioned, and a light bulb went off on my head. And I thought, maybe people actually think that. It's not correct. This school is hopping. It's being used all the time. And it's not just for, parents that are coming to see. So in the gym, you've got wrestling, basketball, volleyball, and gymnastics. It's not just our team sports. It's tournaments that are being thrown. It's people from the community here. It's people from other towns. It's people from other states that are coming here to this building. And this is the first impression they get of South Kingstown. Like, let that sink in, right? We got a gorgeous town. We have amazing facilities here. I think we get a lot for our tax dollars. We've got a third protected space here. We've got beaches. We've got, and this is our high school. So when people come here and this is their first impression, I can tell you that in my line of work, I deal with a lot of folks who are relocating. I can tell you that, and most of whom I deal with are relocating professors from URI. In the last 5 to 6 years, and this isn't anecdotal, this is people telling me, we're not looking at South Kingstown because I've been there, because I toured the school, because I went to a wrestling tournament there. It has that kind of impact on this town. And I think the community really needs to understand that. When we have theater events here, I've got 2 kids involved in theater. Actually, one's out now. I have no skin in this game, by the way. Both my kids will be out by the time the school's built, but that's all right. We have a 700 something auditorium. It's sold out 4 nights. There's lectures that happen for the community members. There's a constant stream of activity here. And I think everybody needs to know that, because maybe you aren't as involved and see these things happening. But a high school like this is really the crown jewel of a town. And if we can attract people in, those 100 kids that we're paying for, if we can even keep 20 of them, I think one of the figures that came out last night, that saves us $1 million or something like that, 20% of that group. If you don't think that a new high school is going to keep students here and attract students here, you're wrong. It's not correct. It is absolutely going to do that, because we're seeing it in our industries where we're seeing people relocating and they're passing it. It's embarrassing that I live in this town and I work in this town, and I talk to people that go, yeah, we're not looking at that. We're not looking at this because I've got children and I've seen the high school. We drove through, we took a look at it. That needs to change. The facilities, we're behind. We're behind the game. We have friends of our family that actually send their kids out there, some of those people, because of better CTE facilities. We've got phenomenal CTEs that are being built here. We don't have the facilities that these kids deserve. And it's really important that the community remembers that. It's about investing in the town. And I think it's important to note that the figure was $426. After the meeting, they took a look at the numbers and they're getting better. That $318 is a better number than it was before. And as you can see, they're overestimating as much as possible for us to make sure we don't end up into a situation like Rogers. And again, Rogers bonded in 2020, right? We don't want to bond at the bottom of the pyramid. We're at the top of the pyramid, where relatively the costs of constructions have leveled off. The bond rates have leveled off. Things will hopefully only get a little bit better. But those are just some points I wanted to make. Again, this is a community space. It's a representation of our community. It's a representation of how we treat our community and our kids.
On that card that you had up on the card, that, are you mailing that card out? The information card? Is that a mailer? Is that a mailer, Jim?
My name is Jim Manning. I'm the town manager here in South Kingstown, resident 25 years. So the question by Ms. Mulholland is that is the town going to send out a postcard or a letter or whatever informing people that this referendum is coming on May 7th? So that came up at the last town council meeting. that is a town council decision that'll be made on the 15th of April at our budget meeting. And the question is on the agenda, which I believe we posted today. And that question will be given to the town council. Do you want us to send out written notification to the 20 some odd thousand residents, voters that are registered? The
Thank
cost-
you, Jim.
The cost will be $25,000, something like that. But it is not required by state law to do that.
I understand that,
Okay.
and I think the cost of it is a drop in the bucket compared to $150 million. And my comment on the card was the $318. I don't think you're being really transparent in that, because $318 doesn't sound like a lot. But I watched the meeting the other night and I asked Brian about the 22.6% increase, whatever it was. So $318 is just for the bond, but the estimated tax that $468,000 homeowner valued now, who knows what it's going to be after value revaluation, that's not considered. That cost 5-year rollout, his tax bill is going to go up $1,119. And that's pretty much an extra quarterly payment that he's going to have to make, he or she or that family on a fixed income, older residents, and our young people. We don't have a lot of young people with families, but those who can get themselves into a house and buy a house, this is going to be a terrible, terrible burden. And I think we need to consider all the people in the town, the financial impact of an extra quarterly payment. Tell that on the card, put that on the mailer. Ask people, are you in a position to pay an extra quarterly payment in 5 years? And this is conservative, as Brian said. This is 1.7% increase each year for the first 5 years from both the town and the school. We have a school budget that has had COVID help for years since COVID. And we know that that's leaving, because if you watch the joint meetings, the school committees told us that they're going to need more money. So they're going to be in this building. They're going to need more money. So I think you should say the conservative 5-year impact for that house is $1,119, and really be transparent. And I would say be honest about it, because people who see $318, they're going to be like, oh, big deal. When they get that tax bill that's $1,000 more than it was, that's going to push people out of town. And I hate to see, and I don't know how in good conscience we can ignore either the elderly on fixed incomes that do not have a 22.6% increase coming down the road. They are out of the workforce. They do not have the midlife. You're getting to the middle of your career and you've got a lot of years to improve your income. They are at the end and they can't do that. And the same for the young people. They do have an ability to increase their incomes, but 22.6%.
So
is a lot.
I appreciate your comments. So that's why, in full transparency, we presented the facts in 3 different scenarios at that meeting that you're referencing. So the first scenario was, what is the cost of the bond only on the taxpayers? And the number we've been using at 3.5% on the bond was 8% increase. Once the bond is fully issued at 150 million, what would the impact be? 8%. That number came out. It actually did go down from 426 to 318 because there was some variables in there on growth of the town. But the second scenario we presented, which to me is one of the most accurate ones we could, and Brian Sylvia worked on this for 2 weeks, is the cost of the bond, the growth of the town operations budget. This town runs very lean. It always has. And I think that that's a testament to the town managers that have worked in the past. They've always had a good lean budget, and it's continued to be a lean budget. So we estimated the growth of the operations of the town, asphalt, all the stuff that we do that the town has to do to keep things operational at about a 1.7%, which is a very good number. That's what we've averaged over the past several years. So that added an additional amount, maybe about 9% more. So that number there, the bond, the 9% for the operations of the town came out to approximately 17%, just a little below that. That we gave that number out. But then we also gave a third slide. Because let's face it, at some point, the schools are going to be asking for additional funds. I mean, anyone in a 20-year period. So Brian, we used a fixed number of $1 million a year extra at some point, whatever the year we started, Brian, was it year 7 or what year? 2026. So that number represented, that's the higher number that you're talking about, Roberta, 22.6%. So that number represents the cost of the bond, the cost of operations to the town, and the scenario where the schools will need additional funds. That quite honest was an estimate, like a guesstimate. I can't predict what's going to happen in years 10, 15, or 20, but we wanted to give a scenario. So I do feel we were honest with the facts, we were transparent, and we put all this out there, and the voters, democracy in action on May 7th will decide, is this the project we want, and are we willing to pay for it? So I hope that answered your
Thank you, Jim. The only thing I'm getting at is that card says nothing about that. It says $318. So that's a false sense of comfort.
I understand what you're saying now. Now I understand it better. The card we would send out would have all the numbers on it. This is something that a town council, as a policy, what do you want sent out to the residents, to the taxpayers, to the voters? And that is something we're going to work on the 15th, once we see what the council wants to do.
And from the building committee, are you supportive of the town sending out a mailer to every voter in this town? Because we did see pushback from the majority of the town council last Monday. Very disturbing. Many people, those of us who look at the agendas and follow the meetings, we know what's going on. But most of the people in the town don't. They don't read the paper. They don't go online. They just don't. So, that's the thing. Does the committee? Okay.
Speaking as the only one person sitting at the building committee, I absolutely would support the town sending out that mailer. Not my choice, not my decision. I'm not making the decision. It's also not my funds, not my money. It is the town. It's the town councilors making that choice, but I would not be against that at all.
I hope every person in this town eligible to vote shows up and votes. That'll truly send an accurate picture. Any more questions for this town staff part of it?
Hi, my name is Maggie Martin. I live here in town. I think I'm too close to the microphone. There's an echo. To piggyback on what Roberta was just saying, I would be very disappointed if the town council elects to not send out a mailer. I don't think it should be up to 5 people to decide whether or not the registered voters are made aware. Maybe put something on the website to take a poll of the residents. Should the town council be required? So the town council sees that those of us who know what's going on are telling them to please tell everyone else, because people don't know. It shouldn't be up to just 5 people.
Well, they are our elected officials.
Yeah, but 3 of them don't listen.
Well, I mean, they might not listen to what you want, but but here's what I would say. Show up at the meeting, voice your concerns, go to public comment. Listen, the squeaky wheel gets the grease in this town. That's why I love municipal government, right? Go to the meeting, be involved.
Yeah.
And the town staff, this is what I commit to you. We will make every effort to get flyers, cards, whatever we need to do to make this town aware of what's going to happen on May 7th. And we're encouraging everyone to vote. Actually, this is a very good sign that all these people showed up here. So show up at the meeting.
Yeah,
I know you have.
But could we possibly put like a poll on a website, the town
I highly
website or
doubt we
something?
would do a poll, to be.
Well,
Well,
how
the
do we,
time is
how
very
do we
short.
tell them we want everyone to be made aware? Like, we're just begging. I'm one person begging. There's other people. People don't know. And it shouldn't be up to just 5 people to decide whether or not the rest of the town is made aware. That I'm just, it's
Well, we're
not
gonna have to
one way or
agree,
the
disagree
other.
on that. They're the
Yeah.
elected officials. They represent 32,000 people. So, we all voted for them. So, but I'll leave it at that. I understand what you're saying, but we will do the best we can to get the word out as far as we can. That we do want that, okay? I promise you that. Any more questions for me? Okay, thank you.
The only reason I'm here is actually totally by chance, okay? I somehow got a text from someone I don't even know telling me about this meeting. And when I read everything that he sent, I sent it out to everybody I know in South Kingstown. That's why some of these people are actually here, okay? And if you don't send out, if you don't inform people better, this project is gonna go down. It's a great project. I'm in favor of your project. I was very impressed by your presentation. What I'm saying is the majority of people in town, especially older people who don't have kids in school, don't even know it's happening. They are totally unaware of it. It's under the radar, okay? You have to inform the public and you got to do it now because if the vote is less than a month away, you must communicate. You might have to do some better PR, okay? Where's the town manager? Good. Did you hear me? Okay, my name is Karen Asher, and at one point, about 20 years ago, actually, I was on the town council. So I understand everything that's going on around here, and you gotta do it. It's a great project. We really need it. And in order to get the support of the residents in town, they have to have an awareness that it's even happening. They don't. Please send out that mailer. And more than that, if possible.
Okay, hi, I'm looking around and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. I think I'm the most recent graduate of South Kingstown High School in the room. I graduated in 2019, which is dawning on me now is actually quite a long time ago. But I hope that I can give a little bit of a student perspective because I was a student not totally that long ago. I really appreciate this presentation. It was informative. I'm excited about it. I happen to live a stone's throw away on Oak Street. I can see the school from my bedroom window. I'm really excited about the opportunity to have this school in my community. I really appreciate what you said about that the caliber of the students in this school does not match the caliber of this building. I can attest to that 100%. I am a proud SK graduate. I happen to also be the daughter of a 30-year teacher. She retired last year. I'm proud of SK. And I think that we deserve a school we can be proud of. And absolutely, I can say for a fact that when I was graduating 5 years ago, we were outgrowing the school. We were doing things far beyond the capacity of the physical walls of the school. So I really hope that the town can see this as an exciting opportunity to invest in the future. I hope that we can see the school as more than just a physical place where we teach math and science, as a community asset, as a community center, as a way to foster the future generation of South Kingstown. So I just want to say thank you. And I just want to say, young people in the town, I'll be spreading the word. I'll be letting people know to vote. And I'm excited to be a part of this project. So thank you.
Anyone else? We know it may be getting late. This was a long evening. We sincerely appreciate. Oh, go ahead, Doral. Bring us home, Doral.
Bring it what? Bring it home? Okay.
Right, so I'd probably been to more town council and school committee, school building committee meetings, I believe, than anybody else in town over the last 4 or 5 years. And so the question, an earlier question about the prior plan, the $85 million plan to move the high school to Curtis Corner, that plan was so flawed that I believe the town council should have sent a thank you card to the people who voted it down. No, I'm serious. Okay, just one part of that plan was to spend $32 million to put additions to Broad Rock Middle School. So today we have 3 grades in the middle school without additions. Okay. Including keeping a high school here in this building. But ultimately, they came to the conclusion to build new because of 2 major factors. The first one was, as we were told by Mr. Conte in Studio Jade, it's more expensive today to renovate a school building than it is to build a new building. And a lot of that has to do with the cost of labor and the ability to get the materials you would need. The bottom line is this school would basically have to have been gutted to the studs of the outside wall. You would have needed all new windows. You would have had some kind of like covering off the facade to make it look nice, but inside it, all of it would be new. But you'd have to take everything out because of all the new technology that needs to go in there and your HVAC systems. But the second thing was probably the most important reason why they decided not to keep the school here was because if that happened, it would have meant moving grades 9 through 12 to Curtis Corner for 2.5 to 3 years. And that would have certainly for students, families who wanted their students not to have to go to Curtis Corner for 3 years while the new school was being fixed up. It would have required temporary classrooms. Mentioned tonight because I came in for now about an hour late. But after the first debacle, okay, architectural firms in Rhode Island and project managers, they didn't want to touch this town. They wanted nothing to do with South Kingstown. As a matter of fact, Mr. Conte, when he saw that South Kingstown needed an architectural firm, volunteered to take this project on. With the collaboration of SLAM Collaborative, we couldn't have a better team working on this project for us. And I'll be eternally grateful to Mr. Conte for stepping forward when we needed somebody.